The reason we only stock D'Addario strings is because D'Addario strings are perfect.
When people come in here, they think that we get them for free or something like that, but we don't. We have no other reason except for dependability and tone.
Hey everyone, this is Chris Kies for Premier Guitar. I'm joined today by the Jesus Lizards, starting off with Duane. Duane, how you doing?
Nice to see you, Chris.
Nice to see you again as well. We saw each other just a few weeks ago in Birmingham.
That's right.
At the conclusion of your guys' 2024 tour.
Yes.
How was that, celebrating not only continuing as a band and having your friendships continue this long, but a new record that came out, June, July?
Yeah, it's really great being able to go out and play shows when you've got new material and people are kind of psyched to hear those songs.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like reminding me of the old days.
Yeah. I'm sure, as you guys have been performing together since, 2009, 2010, and doing the sporadic reunion stuff, I'm sure it was engaging and almost enthralling for you to put out the new music because, after so long of playing what you guys produced in the 90s, it seemed probably like a fresh take on what you guys have done and want to do in the future.
It's all that, and then sometimes you just have to remind people who's boss.
Well, within the band, who's the boss?
Probably that guy over there.
Who we'll speak to in a minute.
Yeah.
Well, Duane, we got actually invited into your home outside Nashville a few years ago, and we did the rig rundown, Perry and I. Yeah. And there's some changes to the rig, and I think I'd like to start with the obvious thing that you're holding is a new thing. It's like I said off camera, be the first time we've seen a Powers electric in a rig rundown. So tell me all about it and maybe how you got introduced to the instrument.
Yeah, so this is the Type A, which I think is probably the only model they make so far. But Billy Gill is their artist rep at Taylor, and so this is part of the Taylor family, I would think. And this is designed by Andy Powers, and everything is proprietary. It's kind of built in-house. It's got a lot of unique features, from the bridge to the pickups to it's completely hollow and has trestle bracing, so it's pretty quiet and pretty feedback resistant, except when you want it to be. It's got the compound radius on the fretboard. And I know they sent me one, just like a prototype or a demo, and I just couldn't leave it alone. It just felt great and sounded great, and so they've sent me one since then. So. Yeah,
I imagine that has reduced the weight that was on your shoulder, playing other instruments, metal-based instruments. Yeah, with this being hollow.
Though most of the other ones I've played over the past 20 years or so have been semi-hollow. Okay. So, but this is definitely the lightest, and yeah, as you get older, it definitely makes a difference.
Yeah. Tell me about what your experience and enjoyment of using these pickups, because obviously you spoke to the proprietariness of the instrument. Yeah. But I'd like to know about your feedback on that.
Well, these are big single coils. Okay. So with single coil, to me, you get a lot of definition and articulation in the attack. In a way that humbuckers don't always do, and slim single coils, to me, don't quite have the output or the push to it, and so this kind of bridges both worlds, I think.
Okay, because normally you've been associated, at least most recently, with P90s, which are single coil based.
And humbuckers. Yeah. But I don't know, they got them pretty well dialed in. I was sort of hesitant at first, because with its hollow and with single coils, I thought, it's going to be super noisy and it's going to feedback constantly. And it hasn't been. In fact, the first time I tried it, I sat in with Mr. Bungle. Okay. And I'm stuck in between Trey Spruance and Scott Ian, who are both playing really loud through PV, I think Van Halen PV amps. Yeah, and I thought, well, if it can keep it together doing this, then it should be fine.
Yeah.
And it has been.
Now, we're inside SIR, rehearsal space in Nashville, and just before you guys head out to the UK to do that winter tour. But I in the interview you did with PG in the magazine a few months ago, you had mentioned that the way you get ready for performing is you go to your personal space where you have your jam set up, your jam gear, and you play really loud with the metronome.
Yeah.
And why is that? Why is that your kind of, you know?
To try to somewhat recreate a live setting, you know, and get used to just the feel. To me, the way things feel is the most important thing, especially with a guitar. But when you're, to me, playing at home with headphones or whatever, that's fine. You get your precision and get all that. But for me personally, I will always crank an amp up. And then nowadays with apps, you know, I have a metronome app in my phone. I can send that to a Bluetooth speaker and crank that too. And I'll even turn the lights on at an angle so that it's kind of in my eyes, not unlike these, and kind of recreate that whole thing in a way.
Yeah.
In a way. And I've had people come in on me and just laugh, like, "What are you doing?" You know, my wife, my dog.
Yeah.
But that's what I do. So, but it's all about the feel. And the same thing I meant to say about with this guitar, it just felt great right from the start. And I've always thought that that's the most important thing, because you can change the way a guitar sounds any number of ways.
Yeah.
You can change even the way it looks, but you can't change the way it feels. And to me, if that's happening, then you can build on that from there.
Now, how are you going about, I guess, let me start again, what are you trying to get done with all your gear? Like, what do you hear in your head when it comes to constructing Duane Denison's guitar tone for specifically to this format, Jesus Lizard? What do you know, obviously all the different equations and elements you have into that, but what do you want to have reproduced every time you hit the stage?
It hasn't, even though the gear has changed, I've
Yeah.
gone over the years, my agenda hasn't. I've always kind of, I want something that's bright and sharp enough that details and things will show through, like unusual chords if that's happening, but at the same time try to have some, you know, drive and some gain and some push to it so it has power as well, but without losing the definition and articulation. And so,
Yeah, if you could show us some of that.
well, for instance, let me tune down just for a second.
Speaking of that, what different tunings are you guys typically using in a set list?
In a typical set, I go through 4 different tunings.
Okay.
I'm glad you asked that. So there's standard, right? Standard E. Then, for instance, this song, Hide and Seek, which is the first song on the new album, Rack, is drop D. And I use drop D for slide also on the song Nub. I use drop G on, we have a song called Thumb Screws a few albums back. And then I do this weird sort of E flat, D flat tuning for a song called Thumper. And so I go through 4 different tunings, do it on the fly, and we even have the set list set up. So there's a couple of songs where while I'm tuning back, they start the song, like the bass and drums have an intro, which is kind of, it's a challenge because you've got so much time to get back.
Yeah.
Like the song is starting and you've only got so much time to try to get back.
The train's
in there.
leaving the station.
Yeah, totally, totally. So, so for instance, a song like Hide and Seek starts the album, so it's definitely bright, but it also has the chunk. So when I'm playing on the lower stuff, that's happening, and then when it goes to the higher stuff, and then, for instance, to make a lot of the time, if I'm doing a solo or more of a featured part, to make that jump, I will hit slapback. I am a fan of 50s effects. To me, slapback, tremolo, and reverb, that's where you start, and those will never go away because they're great. So, for instance, this break.
It's so dissonant.
Yeah, and it brings out those dissonant intervals, etc., makes them jump, and then you just come back into the rhythm. So that's that. Let me tune back. So starting in the 80s, I really got into those bands, mostly English bands, Killing Joke, Bauhaus, Susie and the Banshees, Public Image, Gang of Four, etc. And there was a fair amount of chorus on those records, and it helps make arpeggios kind of sing a little more. Especially if you're clean, too. That kind of goes. So I still like that, and it kind of went out of vogue. I think Andy Summers wore it out.
Yeah.
Maybe. But now it's back, but I never stopped using it. I've always liked it for lots of things. It kind of makes the dissonant notes kind of blend together, and it brings out harmonics. If I could play. Whatever. So yeah, so I still like that.
But it's funny because you bring up Andy Summers and a lot of that post-punk stuff.
Who I think is great. Don't take me wrong.
But what you do, I think, in a way, it's a chorus is seen as a one-trick pony, but the way that you use it in other people in similar veins is it's almost a darker application of it. It's a more mysterious thing.
And when you add it with drive and then use it on chords. It gives it a little more movement to the texture. And
it's menacing.
Yeah, it gives it teeth. It really does kind of give it some bite. So there's that. I also like a touch of delay on things, like a quick... And I do that a lot too. I've over the years, you've probably heard, if you've listened to us, I like these unison notes, and I came across this way of fingering in the Villalobos, in classical guitar, the Villalobos etudes. I don't remember which one it was, but if you want to get a nice hollow ringing kind of sound with two unison notes, well, you got to stretch out and get them. The other way would be to, but yeah, that gets kind of old, right? And it has a certain blues connotation that I'm not against. It's just not what we do.
Yeah.
So I've found, for instance, whether it's Dudley. Like that, or and it gives it a nice ringing kind of metallic kind of quality, which I like. And the Helix, it has a really good delay built into it, and then you got to have a little bit of once in a while something that I don't even know what you would call this. And then it's got a little bit of backwardness to it. I think you should have at least one sort of oddball thing that even if you only use it once in the whole set, it kind of gives it a splash of color.
Now, where does this come up on the set? Like, where would you apply this?
We have a song called Lord Godiva.
Okay.
And there's a breakdown in the middle, from the new record, and there's a breakdown in the middle where I kind of do that, and then it lurches back into the riff. So it's kind of a splash of color right there.
How have you find as a guitarist through all these iterations of the band and the albums you guys have put out? But one thing I've always found appealing to your guitar playing is the space or the notes that you don't play, because a lot of times as guitar players we want to jam every note and then some into whatever time frame we're given.
I think that's a really good point. It's kind of a crucial thing, I think, is to leave some space for atmosphere, and if you've got to touch some effects or something, it gives them a little room to breathe. It leaves room for the other instruments. You define yourself as much as anything, not just by what you do, by what you don't do.
Yeah.
And so the world is full of guitar players who are just jamming everything they know at you every chance they get. And I think it's okay to not do that, at least, not all the time. And have songs where you have your battle plan and you have your agenda of what you want to do. But then there's times when maybe you don't need to do that, and maybe it also leaves space, I think, for the listener's imagination to participate in the song. And when you're constantly just barraging people, there's some bands that I like, especially a lot of metal stuff where it's so busy and so dense that I can't take 15, 20 minutes of it.
Yeah.
And so maybe people will find other reasons not to listen to us.
Now, are you finding yourself in the moment when you guys are coming up with songs and you're rehearsing them, or they're giving it life? Are you actively pulling back notes or phrases or chords, or is it kind of the decision not to put anything there to start with?
To start with, I think over the years I've just I think everybody kind of finds their voice, and you find your way of writing, and you just naturally hold back a certain amount. And I think that's kind of probably the aesthetic to me of myself, is leave space for the other instruments and for the vocals as well.
Yeah.
I think the music, especially with a rock band, as much as anything, you're making atmosphere for the vocals. You're a vocal group, and as soon as those vocals come in, that's what people notice more than anything.
Yeah.
Right? So to me, it's a matter of finding the right sort of atmosphere and the right balance for that.
Well, you got David and Mac, who are like a steamrolling locomotive, you know what I mean? So
Yes.
the way that you pepper yourself in and out of that context, but you guys three are a cohesive unit.
The song,
and then David does
yes.
David.
And then the song, for instance, the song I mentioned earlier, Lord Godiva, there's a lot of bass going on. I don't need to be playing the whole time. I can kind of do a rhythm part. Leave the space. Like that as an example. And the bass is churning, and bass and drums are churning away, so I don't need to be da-da-da-da-da the whole time. Right?
Well, getting back into the rig talk of this conversation, what do we got for strings?
Strings, I'm using, it's funny, this year I decided to make some changes, and there's a local company called Stringjoy.
Yep.
And they make, these are 10.5s. So for years I thought 10s were too light, 11s are too heavy. What do we do? And then they said, well, they make 10.5. I didn't think you could do that. I didn't think you were allowed to do a half, whatever it is, half millimeter or whatever. But they have a set of 10.5s that are coated. And so I'm kind of playing coated. I like the feel, and they really do last longer. And so when you're touring, a lot of times you don't have time to change strings every day. And we don't typically bring techs with us.
Yeah.
We've always been kind of done it the punk rock do-it-yourself kind of thing, and we've been self-sufficient for a long time. Plus, I'm pretty good on guitars. I worked at Gibson for a year when my wife was pregnant, so I learned a lot of things. Also, in the reality, I mean, you have a budget to stay within. And when I hear rock stars complain about how they can't afford to tour anymore, and it's like, well, you got more guys in your crew than on stage. Let's start there. But anyway, enough of that. So Stringjoy, and then Stringjoy picks. I'm really liking these kind of thicker, these are called Jumbo Jazz, which have a really sharp point to them.
Yeah, have you always had a sharp point for a pick?
No, and I tried it. I think I need help.
For
I need
more
help.
precision?
Yes, exactly. As I've gotten older, I've kind of, I don't know, I'll take all the help I can get. So that's what I do.
Now, speaking on that, is there anything you're doing or not doing to keep your hands limber and, that required
absolutely.
of playing guitar?
We all kind of do different physical things, whether it's total stretching, body stretching, everything. Yes, I will always do different hand exercises, different angles, different things. Sometimes when we come off stage at the end of the set before the encores, myself and David Sims will both kind of do this sort of praying hands. It must look silly to someone like, oh God, they're praying before they
take the stage again.
But no, it's like it stretches out the tendons in your forearms, and which gets really tight. So over the years, we've kind of had to do more of that.
All
definitely.
Right. Well, I think we should move on to the amp here. And, we had spoken last time at your home. It was a Black Star. I know that you still got that in the rehearsal space. But how did you get hooked up with Victory?
Alex Auxier, the same guy, he's artist rep also for Stringjoy.
Oh, okay.
And so he was artist rep for that. And I'd seen other people playing them. And I thought they sounded great. But I hadn't seen any around. They're fairly new, right? I've always favored English amps. To me, I think American guitars and English amps make the world go round. And
Peanut butter and jelly.
And so they sent me one to try, and I just loved it. And it's simple, but it sounds great. It's got 2 channels. You've got your vintage channel and your hot rod channel, foot switchable. It's simple. You don't have to program it and save it. You don't have to do any of that. You just kind of set it. As you can see, it's very intuitive with your classic chicken head knobs. It's got power level. Like right now, I'm on the 35 watt. And I'm barely on. If I go to 100 watt, it's not a significant. But if we were to keep turning up, the headroom is alarming. It's so powerful. But I'm very, very happy with it. And I also have high watt stuff, I have Fender stuff, and I love Marshall stuff as well. Like typically live rentals. I like the JCM 900. Other people don't.
Yeah, Perry said he's more of an 800 guy. So what do you like about the 900?
It bridges the gap between the 800 and the JVM.
Okay.
It's got channel switching, but you don't have to program it. And it doesn't have 3 or 4 rows of knobs that you get lost on. At least I do. And it's simple. It's simpler than a JVM, but it's got more going on than an 800. So,
before we move on, were we getting the drive from the amps and the channel switching?
Totally.
So all that's coming out of the Line 6 Helix here that we'll talk about now is kind of just the colorings, different effects.
Yeah. So for live, I typically have a bank of sounds for this group. And
it looks like it's kind of set up like a pedal board, like you would normally have pedals
It totally is.
Yeah.
And to me, that's what I like. It's all in one thing. These are just my tweaked versions of analog pedals, just classics. So like I had said earlier, you've got a straight sound, reverb, trem, and slap, the classic old school sounds, and then chorus, delay, wah, even sort of a wah overdriven thing, and then like a wild card like effect. And then I have one change. We have a song called What If, and it has kind of a cleaner setting and with this vibe kind of sound. It's just a nice like optic tremolo. And then in the middle I've got this sort of expansive. And I got that. Have you seen those Mantic Flex? You know that company?
Yep.
Are they Lithuanian or something?
They're definitely from
Estonia,
over there.
Lithuanian, and they had the Third Man, like the Jack White pedal, one of his.
Oh yeah,
the
Mantic Flex.
He showed me his pedal board one day, and he went through all his different sounds, and there was one in particular that I just thought that is gnarly, and so rather than bring that and patch that in and have a whole nother thing, I just sort of approximated it with that sound we just heard. So that's what that's all about.
Now, Paul Allen, who was the producer, is a longtime friend of the PG, and so he was kind of contacted for the piece that you did, and he mentioned that your guitar soloing abilities, or the way you write your guitar solos, whether it's stuff with Jack White, Morning, Noon, and Night, Tomahawk. He referenced Fatback, and then the new record, Grind. He said Duane writes in a way that is a harmonic Rubik's Cube that only he can figure out. So I ask you that, or I bring that up to see if you could walk us through maybe how you play Grind, knowing that you're the only one that has the instruction manual.
Oh, that one. But it's kind of almost like a collection of things I've done before. So it's got a pretty simple driving riff, almost like R&B. Then switch octaves. Then it's got a turnaround where I do a little bit of hybrid picking. And then it's got the solo, which it starts off. It's pretty traditional. It starts that way. Then it goes back to the original riff. So keeping it pretty straightforward, then it kind of takes off a little. And then if I can do it. Then I do like an interval climb. This alludes to the opening song Hide and Seek that had that 7th. So now I kind of bring it back. Get out of it. So try to mix the highbrow, sort of artsy, weird intervallic things with the more rocking, grinding, like aiming for your forehead stuff. and that's all it is.
I leave you with one last question, and it's clear that you love guitar. You even have taught lessons. Clearly, you're very good at describing what you're doing in a way that any of us can hopefully try to digest. But
I'm sure.
What do you still enjoy about playing guitar and performing with these guys?
There's just nothing else like it. There really isn't. And it's just been like, for me, playing music and playing especially loud rock guitar, it's just like this, how can I say this without sounding stupid? It's like you create this special place for yourself. It's like a doorway. To me, a good guitar, something you bond with, is like a doorway to another world. And you can at any time just step right through. And no matter what else is going on in your life, if you've got it together, you've always got that space for yourself and for others who are into the same thing. And with all the chaos in the world, it's nice having that.
Yeah.
And that's what guitar is. It's part escape, part mirror, part individual thing, individual expression, part group expression. And to me, there's nothing like it.
Well, I really appreciate your time, Duane, and we're going to talk to David now and talk about his bass setup, but I really appreciate everything you've done for guitar and music in general.
Oh, very kind, very kind. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you guys.
Thank you so much.
Hey y'all, I'm John Bohlinger with Premier Guitar. So our rig rundowns for a long time now have been sponsored by D'Addario. And I'm thrilled to be using the D'Addario Expand Pedalboard. I've got this little guy that fits in my gig bag, and like many of you, I'm changing pedals all the time. I love having a board that can shrink as I'm shrinking my board or expand as I'm expanding it. And that's why I love the Expand pedal board. Their patented telescoping technology lets me instantly change the size of my pedal's playground. It also features a unique cable management system and comes fitted with loops of Velcro, keeping everything neat and easy to swap. The two Expand versions comes with either 1 or 2 rows depending on your needs. So a big thanks to D'Addario. Now let's get back to more rig rundowns.
All right, now we're joined by David. David, how you doing?
Good, thanks. Thanks for coming by.
Absolutely. This has been a treat so far. We got to talk to Duane, and now we're getting to include you, because obviously last time we spoke with Duane at his home, you weren't there, as you should not be, because you don't live in Nashville, but here you are in the rehearsal space before you guys hit the UK for a first time in a long time. But this, speaking of long time, this has been your bass, what, back 80s scratch acid?
Yeah, I bought this bass I think in 1981. I really didn't know anything about bass guitars, but I had $250 to spend, so I went to a guitar store called Guitar Resurrection that's unfortunately not there anymore. And I just walked in and bought what I thought was the nicest looking bass that I could buy for $250.
Yeah.
So this is what I walked out with, and it's actually still works pretty well for me. I feel like it's like probably the best $250 I ever spent.
Yeah. I would say it's a worthy investment.
I like the single coil pickups. I like the maple neck. I like the black block inlays.
Now, have you tried other basses, or as your career has grown and you become a bass player that has decades-long material and years playing? Have you tried other basses, or is it just something that it's worked and you've not tried even?
I mean, I own other basses, but yeah, I am most comfortable playing live with this and recording with this. I like Fender Jazzes in general. I
Okay.
own a couple other ones, but this is what I take with me when I'm going out.
Yeah, it's funny because when I started getting into gear, and obviously following you guys before that was a thing in my life, is I thought the Memphis jazz bass was something that maybe Fender did, or some special thing. I didn't realize it was a Japanese
Yep.
it's a Yamaha, I think, or it's
I don't know.
it's
The
it's a
Wikipedia
copy.
page is very confusing.
Yeah,
and, yeah.
There's conflicting reports.
There's conflicting reports. Yeah.
But it's a lawsuit era. I figured it was some special thing, and then when I saw the story that it was $250
yeah.
in the 80s, and it was the only reason you bought it is because it looked nice.
Yeah.
It doesn't look as nice as when you first bought it, I'm sure.
Probably no. It's definitely seen some miles. It's definitely seen some miles. Yeah,
So-
it's a little beat up.
You spoke about the single coils being something you enjoy in the jazz bass family, but what do you like about this bass that's kind of been the thing for what you do?
I think I kind of want a bass sound where I want the attack to be very present. I want like a very sharp attack envelope. And I think the single coils are good at that. I want to be able to play. I want it to like have some punch to it, but I also want like if the notes to all be like very well articulated. So it's trying to find that sweet spot where it's like heavy, but still like where everything can be clearly heard and well articulated.
And because of that attack, are you always using a pick when you're playing with Jesus Lizard?
Almost always. There's
Okay.
like a couple of songs, one song that I play with fingers,
And
but
which one's that?
my own urine.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what are you using for bass strings?
Rotosound RS66 LD. That's kind of my string, and it's the same thing. It's like you can get like just a really nice high end out of it. You can really get like a bright attack that just sounds like you're like banging on a piano string with a hammer.
Yeah.
Which is kind of what I'm going for.
Now, are you changing the strings more often than maybe most bass players would? So I've heard people say they won't change them until they break them because you want that bright attack.
Yeah, I probably change them every 3 or 4 shows.
Okay.
Yeah.
So enough, yeah.
Yeah, I don't even know what people typically do, but that's what works for me.
Yeah, a lot of times when we'll talk to them, there's definitely bands or band members that won't change strings until they break them.
No, I definitely can feel like that like I said, feel that attack kind of losing its edge, and we'll change them when feel like that's about to happen.
Can you demonstrate that? Because I know people, obviously, with the whole band in flight, that's part of the equation. But can we hear like what you're looking for when it comes to the sonics of the bass?
Right, something like. I mean, yeah. I mean, can you hear this? There's definitely like an edge there to the attack, but there's also like a low end. It's kind of holding down the bottom with Mac and the kick drum and stuff. But I need it to like cut through because Mac makes a lot of noise. Duane can make a lot of noise. So if there's like a temptation, I think, to make it like very like, just heavy and low end and stuff. And it sounds great when you're playing by yourself. But in my experience, I've never been able to do that and have it like cut through and kind of like keep up with those guys.
Now, is there anything that you are doing in terms of EQing the amp that gets more of that attack, or anything that pokes out through more that you're looking for?
Yeah, I mean, there's the Gallien-Krueger amp. This is the amp that I've played for a long time. I mean, it's kind of like the classic, like, scoop at the kind of the classic mid-range scoop, where there's like a little bit more. I put in a little bit more high end, more bass. Sometimes on some songs I have that mid-range contour button in. Sometimes I don't. It kind of depends on the song.
Okay.
Yeah, it's kind of like a pretty standard rock EQ thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so you alluded to that you recorded rack with this, or were there other instruments that you used?
Rack was recorded mostly on, like, the other amp that I like almost as much as this, the Gallien-Krueger 800 RBs, is the Ampeg SVT CL.
Okay.
The classic.
The classic series.
And we set them both up and we kind of A-B'd them, Paul and I think we settled on the SVT for most of Rack.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what about the Memphis bass? Was that the predominant bass?
That's the only bass.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Man. And do you even bring up a backup, or is on
Not
tour?
No, I don't. It's a good idea, but
I mean,
if
it works.
I haven't done that yet.
Yeah.
I never break strings, so.
I know that these are just kind of rented for the rehearsal here, but I assume they're 15s.
Yeah, they are 15s. I typically do play through a couple of 15s, or sometimes also or an 8x10. I like the Ampeg 8x10 cabinets.
Yeah, what's your standard current? I just had seen you guys a few weeks ago in Birmingham at the end of the tour. What were you normally running through that U.S. run?
That was a 15 and a 4x10.
Okay.
But I think I kind of wasn't that crazy about it, and I think moving forward, I'm just going to do two 15s.
What don't you like about the 10s? Asking you about something that happened weeks ago, but what do you, if you can articulate that?
Well, they were like rented gear. And,
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it is hard to articulate.
Yeah. It's probably hit or miss when it comes to renting gear, in terms of what you
Yes.
can get, and then also if it's quality.
Right. And also, a lot of them put a limiter in some of those cabinets and not tell you, and that can be frustrating.
Interesting.
I had some of that to deal with on this last tour. That was, thank you. Thank you, Gand Music, Chicago, Illinois.
Well, what do you have at your feet? I know that I've seen pictures online, and we had talked about it before we were rolling. Is that a rat was part of the equation? I know a red snapper was.
I like this that distortion pedal. I like that it's got the little two-band EQ, and I can wind up the bass a little bit, and I don't have the low end falling out when I step on it.
Okay.
Which was a problem I had with the Rat. I like the distortion of the Rat, but I just felt like I was always losing the low end.
Mm-hmm.
And then what is that? The chorus, I use that just on a couple of parts of a couple of things, and then the Phase 90 I use on literally one part of one song. I don't really use those very much. Probably 90% of this time I'm just straight into the amp, but they're there sometimes just to entertain myself.
Are you changing any of the settings on the bass itself?
No,
with volume?
this is all just everything. It's just,
all 10s.
I do that. Yeah.
And then are you, I guess, managing the dynamics based on how you're hitting the strings itself? Yeah. Can we hear, while we have you, and just for fun, I guess, we'll hear the bass overdrive?
Yeah.
Kind of AV
there's
it.
And then,
Yeah, I mean, it still has that thump, though, the bass.
yeah, it's definitely there, and you can see the gain on the pedal is not turned up that much. You can definitely get a lot woollier with that than I have, but yeah.
And then just to entertain myself, could we?
Yeah,
we have to
do this song that I think Duane mentioned, "What If," and it has a few parts that I go to, the main riff. I'm going.
Notice.
Yes, and then I go to these parts up here. So I like that, going up to those little bits. I like kind of that little. I just feel like the modulation kind of just adds a nice little atmosphere to that little bit.
I mean, that song specifically is such a palate cleanser on the record. I'm curious, how did that come about, and where did the genesis come?
Well, Duane, I mean, most of those riffs, come from Duane, and I think we kind of just worked on it to get the atmosphere where we wanted, and work on the sounds.
Because it's really haunting. And you performed that song in Birmingham, and David almost does a spoken word, brings out the stool.
It is, brings out the stool. Yeah, it's a lot of fun to play. It's a great song to play.
What are some other songs that you enjoy playing?
I like playing. I'm having trouble remembering titles. Hide and Seek. Hide and Seek is a lot of fun to play. I'm trying to think of titles. Sorry.
Oh, Lord Godiva has a great.
Lord Godiva's fun, sure. Lord Godiva's will work out. Sometimes I always kind of step up to Lord Godiva and go, okay, I hope this works. Sometimes I'm kind of just barely hanging onto the skateboard with Lord Godiva, but it always seems to kind of come together at the end.
What's the difficult part for you? Is it dexterity, or?
Yeah, I mean, basically it's that. There's a part where it kind of, I'm going to turn down a little bit, but it goes up to the C, where it's like. See, I'm not even playing it well in there. But yeah, that bit that goes up to C can be a thing to focus on.
That strikes me as one of the things that you probably wrote, recorded, glad it was there, and then you're like, oh, now I have to reproduce this.
And then I have to play it live, and it's like, why did I think that was a good idea?
Well, David, I really appreciate. I know you guys are hanging out and done rehearsing, and you want to get home or get on to the hotel. So I appreciate your time, I know all of us Jesus Lizard fans out there really appreciate you guys doing this and continuing on with Rack because it's a killer album.
Thank you.
And as I would like to say, it's a lot of times when bands come back and whatever reason they're missing what they had, and I don't think that you guys, I would use the phrase, impotent imposters of yourselves from the 90s, because it's a really good Jesus Lizard record, and I'm glad to say that it rips.
Thank you. Yeah, we were happy with how the record came out, and we've really been enjoying playing the shows.
Yeah. Well, you guys get out there and check them out in 2025, because I know I will be.